The gym was a kaleidoscope of chaos, scorched sugar mingling with cumin, the sizzle of oil popping like distant gunfire. When Tyler Grayson's voice cut through, sharp and venomous as a switchblade. "Yo, fried chicken boy. What's next? A bucket, a banjo, and a welfare check." His sneer was a flare igniting the air, his laughter a match struck against the dry tinder of his crew, Ethan and Riley, who cackled like hyenas on the hunt. Jamal Carter stood rooted, his hands trembling around a foil tray of golden drumsticks, their warmth a cruel contrast to the ice flooding his veins. His breath snagged, trapped in a vice of shame and fury as the festivals hum. An orchestra of chatter and clinking plates, dissolved into a suffocating, electric silence. Every eye turned, every snicker a whip cracking against his skin, and at 13, Jamal felt the weight of a history he hadn't written crushing his chest. This wasn't a jab. This was a crucifixion, public and personal, and the crowd was already choosing their nails. Southwood Middle School's Culture Day was a yearly charade, a fragile patchwork of heritage stitched together with potluck dishes and forced grins. Jamal had spent the previous night with Mama Grace, her hands, gnarled as ancient oak, steady as stone, guiding us over a spitting skillet in their cramped kitchen. "This ain't just chicken, baby," she'd said, her voice a riverbed of memory, deep and worn smooth by time. "It's our roots, our fight, our heart." The room had glowed with her stories, of ancestors who cooked through slavery's long shadow, through the barbed wire of segregation. And Jamal had watched the spices bloom, paprika and garlic weaving a tapestry of resilience into every bite. He'd carried that tray to school like a talisman, dreaming it might carve a sliver of belonging in a world that rarely spared him a glance. Southwood wasn't built for belonging. The suburbs sprawled white and pristine, its school a microcosm of unspoken borders. Mostly white kids, a handful of black ones like Jamal, a scattering of Latinos and Asians threading the edges. He'd learned to shrink, to dodge the spotlight's glare, but Tyler Grayson wielded it like a flamethrower. With his floppy blonde hair, easy grin, and a swagger that owned every hallway, Tyler ruled 8th grade, flanked by Ethan, a wiry loudmouth with a knack for escalation, and Riley, a hulking shadow whose silence was its own menace. They'd jabbed at Jamal before, his faded sneakers, his quiet lunches, but it was always quick, fleeting. Today, with his chicken laid bare on the table, he was a target painted in blood. He set the tray down, smoothing the carb beside it. Southern fried chicken, a taste of home. The gym pulsed with life. Kids darted between booths. Teachers sipped punch from plastic cups. Parents snapped photos with proud smiles. For a fleeting second, Jamal let himself hope, picturing kids lining up, tasting his history, maybe even asking about Mama Grace. Then Tyler's shadow fell, deliberate and heavy, his crew trailing like wolves. "Yo, Jamal," he called, his voice a megaphone slicing through the din. "Fried chicken? Man, you're a walking billboard for every black joke in the book." Ethan's laugh was a jagged yelp, Riley's smirk a silent blade, and the sound clawed at Jamal's gut. His throat tightened, heat creeping up his neck as heads turned, eyes stabbing from every corner. "It's just food," he said, staring at the tray, voice barely a whisper. "Same as yours." Tyler snorted, gesturing at his own table, a sad pile of hot dogs and buns still in their plastic sleeve, a mockery of effort. "Yeah, but mine doesn't scream ghetto." "What's next?" Collards, Kool-Aid, and a rap battle. Laughter rippled, some kids joining in, others shifting uncomfortably, their unease a faint hum beneath the mockery. Jamal's mind raced. "Walk away," he begged himself. "Don't give him this." But Mama Grace's words anchored him, a lifeline in the storm. "This is us." He lifted his chin, defiance flickering in his chest. "It's my grandma's recipe," he said louder, steadier. "It means something to me." Tyler stepped closer, his breath sour with malice, his eyes glinting like a predator's. "Oh, poor little Jamal, Grandma's special chicken. Maybe she should have taught you something less basic." The word landed like a fist, and Jamal's hand shook. He saw Mama Grace's kitchen, her pride, her strength, and Tyler, who knew nothing, dared to spit on it with every syllable. A sharp voice pierced the haze. "Lay off, Tyler." Sarah Kim stood at her booth, arms crossed, her dark eyes flashing like storm clouds over a restless sea. Her kimchi pancakes steamed behind her, their sharp scent a quiet rebellion against the chaos unfolding. Tyler wheeled on her, his grin twisting. "What's your deal, Sarah? It's just a joke. Relax." "Not to him," she snapped, stepping forward, her small frame bristling with resolve. "You're a bully." Ethan jumped in, his voice dripping with mock offense. "Oh, here comes the woke police." "Chill out, it's not a hate crime." Jamal's chest burned, a furnace of conflicting flames. He didn't want this, didn't want Sarah's shield, didn't want the pity in her stare, but her words steadied him, even as he hated needing them. "I don't need your help," he muttered, his voice a low growl, and she flinched, her jaw tightening as she stepped back, hurt flickering in her eyes. The air crackled, thick with tension, a live wire sparking in the humid gym. Kids pressed closer, drawn by the scent of conflict, their whispers a low buzz. Mrs. Hargrove, the history teacher with her frizzy curls and weary patience, pushed through the crowd, her hands planted firmly on her hips. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her tone clipped, her eyes darting between the boys. "Nothing," Tyler said, all wide-eyed innocence, his smirk barely concealed. "Just chatting about the food." Her gaze flicked to Jamal's tray, then to Tyler's face, lingering on the glint in his eyes. "Keep it respectful. This is Culture Day, not a circus." She hesitated, her expression softening briefly as she glanced at Jamal, then turned away, her warning swallowed by the resuming chatter. Tyler waited 3 beats, his smirk resurfacing like a shark breaking the surface. "Guess you're safe now," he hissed, low and venomous, his voice a blade meant only for Jamal. "Run home to Grandma and cry about it." Jamal's world tilted, the gym spinning around him. He saw Mama Grace's hands, cracked and steady, stirring that skillet with a rhythm born of survival. He saw her eyes, bright with stories of ancestors who endured, her arms that held him when his dad vanished into the night with nothing but a slammed door and a half-empty closet. Tyler didn't know her, didn't deserve to, and yet he mocked her with every breath, turning her legacy into a punchline. "Say it again," Jamal growled, stepping forward, his voice shaking but loud enough to turn heads. "I dare you." Tyler blinked, caught off guard, his smirk faltering for a heartbeat. Then he laughed, a cold, brittle sound that sliced the air like shattered glass. "What? You gonna fight me over some greasy chicken?" Typical. That word was a match to gasoline, igniting a fire Jamal couldn't douse. His mind screamed stop, a desperate plea echoing in his skull, but his body surged forward, driven by a fury he couldn't name. He shoved Tyler, hard, sending him crashing into his table. Hot dogs tumbled, the crowd gasped, and chaos erupted like a dam breaking. Ethan lunged, grabbing Jamal's shirt, ripping the collar with a snarl that bared his teeth. "You're dead, man," he shouted, his fist raised, but Riley yanked him back, his bulk a sudden wall. Jamal swung anyway, his knuckles grazing Ethan's jaw, a glancing blow that drew a yelp more of surprise than pain. The gym exploded, screams, shouts, a girl's piercing shriek cutting through the din. Mrs. Hargrove's voice roared, "Boys, enough!" As Mr. Perez, the PE coach with his linebacker build, barreled through, hauling Jamal away with an iron grip that bruised his arm. Tyler scrambled up, smirking despite a red mark blooming on his cheek, his eyes glinting with triumph. "Psycho," he muttered, loud enough for the crowd to hear, and phones flashed, capturing every second in a flurry of clicks and gasps. Jamal's stomach churned, ball rising as he realized this wouldn't fade quietly. Not with those videos, not with those eyes. Mrs. Hargrove marched Jamal, Tyler, and Ethan to Principal Dawson's office, her silence a heavier punishment than any lecture, her heels clicking like a metronome of doom on the linoleum floor. The hallway stretched endless, each step driving a nail deeper into Jamal's chest, his torn shirt flapping like a flag of defeat. "Dawson, A towering black woman with gray-streaked braids and a gaze that could cut through steel sat behind her desk, her presence a fortress. "Explain," she said, her voice flat and unyielding, a judge's gavel poised to fall. Tyler went first, all polished charm, his tone smooth as oil. "He attacked me, ma'am. I was just kidding around, and he lost it." Ethan piled on, pointing at his jaw. "Barely a scratch, but he milked it like a war wound." "Yeah, he hit me too. Look at this." "He's crazy." Jamal's throat was raw, his voice a rasp scraping past the lump lodged there. "They ganged up on me. Tyler trashed my family, my food. Called it typical. Ethan grabbed me first. I was defending myself." Dawson's eyes narrowed, pinning Tyler like a specimen under glass. "That true. It was a joke," he said, shrugging, his smirk a faint ghost. "He's too sensitive. Jokes don't draw blood," she snapped, her tone a whip crack. "And Jamal, fists aren't answers. You're all better than this, or you should be." She leaned forward, her presence a wall of judgment. "You're suspended from the festival. Library now. Parents are on their way." Jamal's heart plummeted, a stone sinking into a black abyss. Mama Grace would hear this. Her boy, her quiet pride, brawling over her chicken like some street thug. He could already see her face, the disappointment etching lines deeper than time ever could, her eyes dimming with the sorrow he'd put there. Ethan smirked. Tyler muttered, "Catch you later, tough guy," and the weight crushed him further, a boulder on his chest. In the library, he slumped into a chair, the silence a cage pressing in from all sides. He replayed it, the shove, the swing, the crowd's roar, the rip of his shirt. "I'm a thug now," he thought, the word a brand searing his mind. "That's all they'll see. Mama's gonna hate me for this." The door creaked, and Sarah slipped in, a drumstick wrapped in a napkin in her hand, its golden crust still glistening faintly. "Snag this before they cleared your table," she said, offering it with a small, tentative smile. "It's incredible, Jamal." He took it, staring at it, the warmth a faint echo of home that mocked him now. "I messed up bad," he said, his voice hollow, barely above a whisper. "They messed up," she said, sitting across from him, her eyes searching his. "Why'd you hit them?" Jamal's voice cracked, a dam splintering under pressure. "They don't get it. That chicken, it's her. It's everything she's fought for, everything she's given me. I couldn't let them take that from us." Tears stung his eyes, hot and shameful, and he swiped them away with a furious hand, hating himself for breaking. I couldn't let them win." Sarah watched him, her gaze soft but steady, a lifeline in the storm. "They didn't win," she said quietly. "You could still show them, show everyone." That night, the house was a crypt, the air thick with unspoken words. Mama Grace had picked him up from school, her arms wrapping him in a hug, so tight he felt her heartbeat. But her silence spoke louder than any scolding. "We'll talk later, baby," she'd said, her voice soft but heavy, and left him to drown in the quiet. He sat on his bed, the dark pressing in like a shroud, her humming faint from the kitchen, a ghost lullaby that only deepened his guilt. "She's ashamed," he thought, the realization a splinter in his chest, sharp and relentless. "I took her gift, her pride, and turned it into a fight." His phone buzzed relentlessly, texts flooding in from classmates, a chaotic mix of noise. Some kids called him a legend, hyping the shove like a movie scene. Others branded him a hothead, reckless and wild. A girl from math class, Tasha, wrote, "Tyler's an ass, but you scared me today." Sarah's message glowed in the dark. "You're not the bad guy here." He tossed the phone aside, its screen a taunting mirror. "I feel like one," he thought, the words a noose tightening around his throat. He saw Tyler's grin, Ethan's fist, his own rage boiling over like a pot left too long on the flame. Then Mama Grace's face, her stories of Elsie, who fed a community through hate, of her own mother, who scrubbed floors to keep them fed after his granddad died. They didn't fight with fists, he realized, the truth a bitter pill. They won with grit, with grace. "I'm not them." Sleep wouldn't come, a cruel fugitive slipping through his grasp. He paced his room, shadows stretching like prison bars across the walls. He saw the gym again, the crowd's eyes, the rip of his shirt, the flash of phones sealing his fate. They'll never let this go, he thought, panic clawing at his ribs. I'm the angry black kid now, the stereotype Tyler wanted me to be. The irony twisted his gut. He'd fought to defend Mama Grace's legacy, but he'd handed them the script instead, written in his own blood. Next day, Mrs. Hargrove caught him at lunch, her voice soft but insistent, cutting through the cafeteria's clamor. I've been thinking, Jamal, she said, her gray curls bouncing as she leaned closer. Tyler was cruel, Ethan too. But you've got a story in that tray. Tell it at the assembly tomorrow. His stomach flipped, a sick lurch that nearly dropped his tray. Me? Talk. In front of everyone. Yes, she said, her eyes kind but unyielding, a teacher's faith he didn't feel he'd earned. Your chicken's more than food, it's history. Make them see. He wanted to run, to vanish into the linoleum, to never face those eyes again. Tyler would be there, Ethan too, laughing, plotting, their crew a pack ready to pounce. The whole school, judging him all over again, their whispers already sharpening into blades. But Mama Grace's voice rang through the doubt, a beacon in the fog. This is us. Okay, he whispered, barely believing the word as it left his lips. That night, she sat with him on their sagging couch, her hands tracing old scars as she spoke of Elsie, of cooking under a sky heavy with threats, of feeding strangers who'd curse her name just to prove they couldn't break her. We don't bend, baby, she said, her voice a quiet fire. We build. He scribbled notes, her strength seeping into him like rain into parched earth. But the fear lingered, a cold fist squeezing his heart, whispering that he'd fail her again. The day before the assembly, the air at school thickened with menace, a storm brewing in the halls. At lunch, Riley cornered Jamal by the lockers, his bulk a wall of muscle and malice, his shadow swallowing the light. You think you're untouchable now? He growled, his voice low and dangerous, a rumble of thunder. Tyler's not done. Neither am I. Jamal's pulse spiked, his back pressed against cold metal, the locker's edge biting into his spine. I don't want trouble, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Too late, Riley said, shoving him hard. The lockers rattled, and Jamal stumbled, his shoulder slamming into the frame, a jolt of pain shooting through him. A hall monitor shouted, "Hey, break it up!" And Riley backed off, his glare a promise etched in stone. Watch yourself tomorrow, he muttered, vanishing into the crowd like a predator retreating to strike later. Jamal's hands shook all day, fear, anger, dread coiling tight in his gut like a snake ready to strike. They're gonna jump me, he thought, the certainty a weight dragging him down. After the assembly, they'll corner me. Riley's fists, Ethan's kicks, Tyler's laugh. He saw it in vivid flashes, blood on the pavement, his body crumpled by the back exit, no one there to hear him scream. His note card felt like a death warrant, its edges curling from his sweaty grip, but he clutched it anyway. Mama Grace's words his only armor against the terror gnawing at him. That night, he barely slept, nightmares of Riley's bulk and Tyler's laugh weaving a tapestry of dread. He sat up, staring at the tray still on his dresser, the chicken cold and lifeless now, its pride tarnished by his failure. I can't do this, he thought, panic clawing his throat, his breath shallow and ragged. But Mama Grace's hug that morning, fierce, unyielding, a fortress of love, pushed him out the door, her whispered, "You're enough," echoing in his skull. At school, Sarah found him before the assembly, her eyes wide with worry, her voice hushed as she pulled him aside near the water fountain. I heard Riley talking in the bathroom, she said, glancing over her shoulder. They're planning something after, by the bike racks. Be careful, okay? Jamal nodded, his stomach a knot of acid and steel. Thanks, I'll figure it out. She hesitated, biting her lip. I could walk with you after. They won't touch you if I'm there, too many witnesses. He shook his head, pride warring with fear. I can't hide behind you, Sarah. She frowned, her brow creasing, but let it go, her silence a reluctant agreement. Then, a new wound opened. Kayla, a black girl from his science class, approached at lunch, her usual shy smile replaced by a hard edge. She'd always been quiet, friendly enough, a shadow in the back row. But today her eyes were flint, her voice low and cutting. "You're making us look bad," she said, her words a slap. "Fighting over chicken? They're laughing at all of us now, every black kid here." Jamal's jaw dropped, shock rooting him to the spot. "I was defending yourself," she cut in, her tone sharp as a blade. "Not me. Not us. You think I want to be the punchline too? Next time, think before you swing." She turned and walked off, her ponytail swinging like a pendulum, leaving him reeling. She's right, he thought, the betrayal a knife twisting deeper than Tyler's words. I dragged everyone into this mess. The weight of her judgment settled on his shoulders, a yoke he hadn't seen coming, and he wondered if he'd lost more than he'd fought for. Later, as he hid in the library during free period, nursing his bruised shoulder and his battered pride, an unexpected figure approached. Mr. Perez, the PE coach who'd pulled him off Ethan. His broad frame loomed, but his eyes were softer than Jamal expected, his voice gruff but kind. "Saw what happened yesterday," he said, sitting across from him, the chair creaking under his weight. "You're not a bad kid, Carter. Why'd you let them get to you?" Jamal stared at the table, tracing a scratch with his thumbnail. "They went after my grandma, her food. I couldn't just stand there." Perez nodded, his jaw working as if chewing on the words. "I get it. My dad, he was Mexican, came here with nothing. Kids used to mock our tamales, call us wetbacks. I punched a few noses too." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "But you've got more than fists, kid. Use that head of yours tomorrow. Say what matters. I'll be watching." Jamal blinked, the coach's confession a lifeline he hadn't expected. "You think I can?" "I know you can," Perez said, clapping his shoulder, gentle, but it still stung. "Don't let them write your story." He stood and left, his footsteps fading, leaving Jamal with a flicker of hope amid the dread. The auditorium thrummed with restless energy, kids fidgeting in their seats, teachers shushing from the aisles, the air thick with anticipation. Jamal waited backstage, his note card soggy in his fist, his pulsed jackhammer rattling his ribs. Tyler sat front row, Ethan and Riley beside him, their glares a vow of retribution, their whispers a hiss of menace. Kayla was there too, 3 rows back, arms crossed, her judgment a silent weight pressing down. Sarah lingered near the exit, her presence a quiet anchor. Mrs. Hargrove took the mic, her voice cutting through the noise. Jamal Carter's sharing about Culture Day. "Listen up, really listen." He stepped out, the spotlight a furnace searing his skin, blinding him to the sea of faces. His voice wobbled, a reed in the wind. "Hi, I brought fried chicken to the festival. Some of you laughed." He swallowed, the silence deafening, a void sucking the air from his lungs. "It's not just food." He gripped the mic, words spilling like blood from a wound, raw and unfiltered. "My great-great-grandma Elsie made this. Alabama, 1890s. Hard times, real hard. Her family, they were free but barely. No money, no land, just each other. She'd cook this chicken for everyone. Her kids, neighbors, even folks who'd spit in her face or worse. Because that's how you survive. You hold on. You share, even when they hate you for it." His voice steadied, rising a fire catching. "Mama Grace taught me that recipe. Every shake of salt, every turn in the pan. It's her. It's us. It's not a stereotype. It's survival. It's love." He met Tyler's eyes, then Kayla's, then swept the room. "I shouldn't have fought. That was dumb, and I'm sorry. But I'm tired of hiding who I am, who we are. So yeah, I brought chicken, and I'd do it again." A clap broke the quiet. Sarah, in the back, her hand sharp and sure. Then Mr. Perez, his deep boom joining in. Then more, a wave crashing over him, swelling into a roar that shook the rafters. Tyler looked away, his smirk gone. Ethan slouched, Riley stared at his shoes. Kayla's expression softened, just a flicker, her arms loosening. After kids swarmed him in the hall, some apologizing, some asking about Elsie, their voices a chaotic chorus. But as he headed for the exit, Tyler's crew blocked his path by the bike racks. Riley cracking his knuckles, Ethan bouncing on his heels. "Nice speech," Tyler sneered, his voice a taunt. "Won't save you now." Jamal froze, his heart pounding. 3 against 1, the shadows long and cold. Sarah appeared, phone out, her voice steady as steel. "I'm recording. Try it." Riley hesitated. Ethan cursed under his breath, and Tyler's smirk wavered. Then Kayla stepped up beside Sarah, her glare fierce, her voice a whip. "Back off. He's not alone." Mr. Perez emerged from the building, his silhouette a warning, his whistle dangling like a threat. "Problem here, boys," he called, his tone casual but edged. Tyler's crew faltered. "Whatever," he muttered, and they scattered, their retreat a reluctant surrender. Jamal exhaled, shaky but standing, the unexpected alliance a lifeline he hadn't dared hope for. Days later, Jamal walked the halls with his head higher, the whispers quieter now, some turning to nods. Kayla caught him by the lockers, her voice softer. "I was wrong," she said. "You didn't make us look bad. You made us seen." Next Culture Day, Tyler brought mac and cheese, his mom's recipe, he said, setting it by Jamal's chicken with a quiet nod, no smirk in sight. Kayla brought sweet potato pie, her smile small but real, a peace offering in crust. Sarah added her pancakes, and the gym hummed with a new rhythm. Not perfect, but closer to whole.